All right. First rule of the channel: we not talk about the channel. Second rule of the channel: this is not legal advice. So, my main money league, my auction league, the draft is going to be this Saturday. It's not ideal, but that's just how it works out sometimes. So, I am getting together with my co-manager to finish off the strategy. So, hopefully, tomorrow or the next day, something along that line. I will get a video out, basically going over some of the theory strategy stuff for your auction leagues and to break down kind of my strategy going into that draft. I may end up doing another one of those videos for your auction league closer to what should be normal drafts. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. In this case, I did want to get this out tonight because I was thinking about this as I was working on some of the draft stuff for that auction league. In the case of JJ McCarthy, and I can bring this one up real quick. JJ McCarthy, when it comes to the Vikings being shut down for the year because of that meniscus injury, in general, from a fantasy perspective, this is probably a good thing because, again, like I brought this up before, I generally don't like buying, the unknown in fantasy unless I can take advantage of it. And in this case, like now I know something, and it's not really necessarily whether or not like Sam Darnold's good at football because I don't care about that. Last year with Kirk Cousins, when he was running the offense, when he's attached to the Minnesota Vikings before he tore his Achilles, he was on pace for about like 19 points a game. And again, your scoring settings and my scoring settings may be a little bit different, but he would have been a good enough quarterback when it comes from a fantasy perspective relative to the capital that you were putting into him. And in this case, like he was on pace to lead the league in passing and in passing touchdowns. So again, like this is the type of guy that I would generally want, especially to be like a nice punt going outside of the rounds that like I would normally have to spend capital that I would care about on. So if I knew that with Kirk Cousins last year, I would punt the position, go for Kirk Cousins. So again, you're looking at that with Sam Darnold, except with Sam Darnold at this point in his career, him being 27, he has a little bit more nimbly bimbly than Kirk does, and that's generally what I would like be paying attention to. That to get a guy that theoretically, and again theoretically, not to do a hot take or anything like that, but to generally say that like yeah, I would think that Sam Darnold's going to finish as a top 10 quarterback. I think that's like, not necessarily a hot take at this point, relative to the guy that I think could theoretically lead the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns to go along with just enough nimbly bimbly to move the needle from a fantasy perspective. And that's all I'm generally looking at with Sam Darnold. Because the other things that I care about is after Kirk Cousins went down, like the quarterbacks that filled in for him, Josh Dobbs, like again, from a fantasy perspective, it doesn't matter how good or bad at football a guy is. What I care about generally is whether or not Josh Dobbs like filled in and got me fantasy weeks when he went to the Vikings. He did that attached to this offense. It's going to be a higher volume passing offense, and Josh Dobbs had nimbly bimbly. So again, projecting a guy over that's going to be able to throw the football a lot to good weapons and have a little bit of nimbly bimbly. And then the other guy who finished the season off and now is the backup quarterback for the Vikings right now is Nick Mullins. And you see, like generally speaking, in some of those weeks that I needed Nick Mullins to do Nick Mullins or to be a quarterback one, like 19 points, 20 points, and then 22 in week 18. And if you're one of those weirdos that have like week 18 fantasy championships. So in this case, like if I know that ahead of time with Sam Darnold, absolutely two quarterback leagues. If you're one of those guys that have those like super flex two quarterback leagues, Sam Darnold should be going there. It probably actually raises the bar a little bit. I wouldn't say the bar. Probably makes Justin Jefferson a little bit more of a safe pick, because my problem with Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy is that leash on Sam Darnold was going to be so short that the moment that they were like, hey, JJ McCarthy just needs reps, let's get him in there. And that means like the good and bad of JJ McCarthy was going to translate over to Justin Jefferson. In this case with Sam Darnold, there's nothing else when it comes to the Vikings. Like the next thing is Nick Mullins. So that means like they could just ride Sam Darnold the entire year, see what they can get out of this. Hopefully they could go on a playoff run. And that's a little bit different than like moving JJ McCarthy in and going like, well, he's going to throw 4 interceptions a game. And, when we make the decision to go with JJ McCarthy, we're probably just going to go with him the rest of the year. And the up and down of JJ McCarthy wouldn't necessarily translate to your fantasy lineup in the way that Sam Darnold, who all he has to be is basically like, Kirk Cousins, Nick Mullins, or Josh Dobbs. And from a fantasy perspective, not only do you Justin Jefferson get home, after, Jordan Addison gets through with his stuff and TJ Hawkinson, gets better. Like all he has to do is those guys and you're going to get like a fringe like Brock Purdy as quarterback this year from Sam Darnold. So that's the biggest thing I take about away from that. And that's just another thing when I look at my drafts, I can start going like, well, how much can I punt my position? And that's another guy that goes like, well, I don't have to get scared when it comes to the quarterback position. I could just wait for him to fall to me. So I would probably be putting Sam Darnold in that tier of Trevor Lawrence, of guys that, like, if other guys are going to go up, they're going to spend. I could just go, I got Sam Darnold in my pocket. And the other good thing about this is if you were one of those guys that are going to have the spot to go get Justin Jefferson, yeah, absolutely, I'd probably be stacking my Sam Darnold shares, especially to start the season. There's going to be enough guys. We talked about this like Bo Penix and some of these other guys that, like, I am feeling less and less of a need to go spend on the quarterback position because I'm going to be able to find like that Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, Joe Flacco type guy later on in the draft, as opposed to the basically like 50-50 or 1 out of 4 chance that I hit on one of these quarterbacks. In particular, what we're talking about would be that, like, Patrick Mahomes has to have that MVP season to be able to return in a way that, like, your Josh Allen's, your Jalen Hurts, and your Lamar Jacksons don't necessarily have to do. Once you get into those tier of those quarterbacks, and we're talking like your Dax, your Joe Burrows, your CJ Stroud, like, they have to be league MVP. And the chances of you getting that guy to win you a league, it's not about 50-50. It's actually lower than that, because the guy that goes a different direction wins the draft, because you got the guy that's like a good enough 18 or 19 points a game quarterback, and they got an 18 or 19 point a game quarterback in Sam Darnold later in the draft. So again, it's not an apples to apples conversation in that case. So the other thing to move before I move on to some of the other guys I want to talk about is, this is the general idea for my auction draft that's going to be going on. Guys that have any questions at this point in the draft are off my board. So because I'm drafting so early, this is the stuff that I would be looking at. I don't have the ability to go, hey, what's it going to look like in a couple of weeks? It's not that I'm like that risk averse. It's more along the lines that I have a problem with what is the discount that my league mates are going to give me to go get a guy and find out at that point. So, like, Chase, Jamar Chase, that I'm going to talk about here in a second, like, he's going to have to drop, like, at this point, like $30 in my auction draft. He's going to have to basically be like $20 for me to go out and buy him, because that theoretical upside. Because if I'm buying a guy that's going to miss, or theoretically could miss, a certain amount of weeks in the season, it's just not worth to save $10 on him. He's going to have to be at a range where he becomes replaceable, and that's just likely not going to happen in most of my leagues. So to move on from that, because I already talked about Jamar Chase, so he missed practice, and this is supposed to be from a contract related issue. And if you guys are, some of you guys are probably like not old enough to remember this, and some of you guys may not be into football enough, but about 20 years ago with the Chargers, Vincent Jackson actually held out for like the first 8 weeks of the season, because all you have to do is accrue enough weeks to hit that accrued year when it comes to your contract. And guys like Jamar Chase, and we can kind of talk about this, like Le'Veon Bell, is that they are controlled by the rights of the team, in his case, he's got the 5th-year option, and then you're looking at like 2 years of franchise tag. So they only have so much leverage to go after a team on, and then they also have the ability to potentially, like, sour the well, to such an extent that the team no longer wants them around. So in this case, like, I'm not telling you to take Jamar Chase off your board. What I'm saying is, I am likely going to take him off my board on Saturday for me. And there's a lot of other guys that I would be talking about this in this regard. And we're looking at like CeeDee Lamb. I won't be drafting CeeDee Lamb. Unless something happens by Saturday, I won't be drafting CeeDee Lamb in my league. Now, something happens for you, and your draft is in like 2-3 weeks, like a real functioning fantasy football league should be, then yeah, absolutely go out and draft CeeDee Lamb. But these are the guys I'm going to take off my board. And that's, like, in this case, like Jahmyr Gibbs, gone. He's off my board because of that hamstring issue. Like, I don't have time to wait and see like what it's going to be, see if it's going to be lingering into the season. He's going to be gone. So these are all the things that I would be looking at in general. So a couple other guys like this Tyrone Chasey thing, probably went from a guy that I would be stashing in that auction league to a guy that I can probably let go on the opening season on the waiver wire at this point. Like, I talked about this with Marshawn Lloyd. If he's not going to be healthy enough to eat into that role and potentially takes it over, I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen at this point. Probably should be someone else's problem. Probably not going to be anybody's problem that's going to end up on the waiver wire. He was already a high enough chance of a lottery ticket returning that it just wasn't that big of a deal to me. So in this case with like Tyrone Tracy, I'm not as concerned with it, and I can wait and see what finds out, especially because my draft is this Saturday. And I'm just not going to play with it in that case. A couple other guys, if you're wondering about my thoughts on Brandon Ayuk deal, like I won't be touching him because of the uncertainty on Saturday. I don't think he's necessarily going to get traded. I think the 49ers are playing it smart and allowing him to negotiate with other teams so he and them get an idea of a market value. In general, again, I won't be drafting him because I can't project anything. And if he does go to the Steelers, I don't necessarily think that helps him at all. So like again, when we're looking at like a Garrett Wilson, an opportunity funnel attached to a good enough offense, that's not going to be changing enough if he goes to the Steelers. The other thing is with Adonai Mitchell and the Josh Downs ankle injury, probably makes him a fringe guy that I'd be thinking about. But again, he's going to project down the line like your Rome or something like that to potentially move into wide receiver 2 land as a ceiling, unless he can magically move into that consistency range that Michael Pittman's going to end up taking over. I don't know how much he is going to have value to win me a league. If he does hit, what would be his ceiling, which I think would be like mid to low end wide receiver 2 range if he stays on the field. Now, what makes this a little bit more interesting is if he is primarily running the slot role, which is what he would be doing with Josh Downs out. That may raise his actual week to week floor, which makes it a little bit more intriguing. But again, I'm probably not a guy in most leagues that needs to be drafted at this point. Going on. And then the last thing to talk about this. So the bootleg, or not the bootleg games, the underdog guys. I actually saw the I guess the all 22 film that they have that I don't have access to. Watching Chase Brown, really plummeted down my board because of the lack of vision that's going on in there. And that makes me think that like Zach Moss may not be quote unquote league winner, but he's going to be good enough for government work when it comes down to like, probably costing you like $5 in an auction league, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round draft pick to potentially be an RB2. Like think like Chuba Hubbard to start the season, something along those lines. I am definitely would be raising my thoughts on Zach Moss after watching how bad Chase Brown's vision was, which generally makes me think that like if they're going to use Chase Brown, it's going to be in a specific design usage, which is going to cut into the theoretical ceiling of Zach Moss. But again, if I just want a guy that's going to fall into the end zone, attached to a good offense like Zach Moss, like this something like that, just seeing those 2 reps from the perspective that they had, definitely did change my mind. So anyway, that's my just quick thing to do on a Wednesday night, and hopefully, like I said, I will be getting stuff out tomorrow and Friday.